Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
But you mentioned to me that you have someone, a buddy coming over to watch the game tonight, you told me. But are you talking about the hockey or the basketball?
No, basketball, yes. Friend of the show, Dave Littman, is coming over to watch Game 3 tonight, basketball.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, look.
He's a big Raptors fan, so I'm a little nervous because if the Raptors lose, he might blame me.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
I'm Josh in Toronto.
And I'm Skip in Montreal.
In today's episode, a cursed franchise,
Drake,
and a preview of the Stanley Cup final.
But first, the Toronto Raptors are going to the NBA Finals.
Okay, Skip, it's time for another episode of our show. And it just so happens that we do know who the two teams will be in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Correct.
Or is it final without an S? And we also know who the two teams will be in the NBA Finals.
Correct. And it's crazy that there's a Canadian team in the NBA Finals and once again, not a Canadian team in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Well, there hasn't been a Canadian team in the Stanley Cup Finals for many, many years.
True. Correct.
But it is kind of weird because there's only one Canadian team in the entire NBA, and that one team made it to the finals, and there's 7 Canadian teams in the NHL, and none of them made it. So it is actually against the odds, if you will.
The National Basketball Association.
How big of a night was it in Toronto last night? Was people honking their horns all night to 2 o'clock in the morning, people partying in the streets, stuff like this?
Well, I wasn't downtown, but where I was, I did go to a sports bar to watch the game.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
How was that?
It was fine. It was hard to find a sports bar that had actually a free table. We were lucky to get the table that we got.
I'm sure, because I know I've been in Toronto with you and like on Saturday nights for regular season Leaf games, and it's very hard to get a table at a sports bar.
Yeah.
So I could imagine like the Raptors, making the NBA Finals. Wow, it's. I was thinking about it last night. It's like, is it like the biggest night in Canadian sports history in a long time, and at least?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because there was something that actually annoyed me after the game. Walking home, there was this kid and his dad waving a Canadian flag, and then they a car saw them waving the flag, and so a car started honking.
Yeah.
This is not a Canadian thing. I need to declare this for everyone to hear. This is the Toronto Raptors, not the Canadian Raptors or Team Canada. This isn't the Olympics. This is the NBA. I understand why Toronto fans are excited, and they absolutely should be. And if you want to wave a Toronto Raptors flag or even a City of Toronto flag, go ahead, be my guest. But I don't think you should be waving a Canadian flag because there's not even a Canadian player on the team. And even if there was, you still shouldn't wave a Canadian flag because it's not like the Raptors beat Team USA or Team Argentina or Team Spain. They beat the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, and the Milwaukee Bucks are, a valid opponent. Don't get me wrong. But it's not, this shouldn't be considered a Canadian thing. That's just my opinion.
I believe the Raptors have one Canadian player, Chris Boucher.
Is he even on the team?
Yeah, I mean, he's on the roster, but I don't know if he, I haven't seen him. He hasn't played 1 minute in the playoffs, I don't think.
Right.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so that part actually annoyed me a little bit. But yeah, some people were honking horns. I wasn't downtown, so it wasn't like crazy where I was.
Right.
The Raptors were losing most of the game, so the bar I was in was pretty quiet up until the end, only when the Raptors pulled away and started to make their run. As you say, you're the one who told me many, many years ago, it's all about the runs. And so the Raptors went on this run and they were down by like double digits, and then they took the lead, and that's when everyone in the bar started to get loud.
Yeah. It was Coach K that I got that from. And I mean, who has more basketball knowledge than Coach K? But it happened after. I can tell you exactly where I got that from. Like, basketball is a game of runs. It was the 1994 NCAA championship game. Duke lost to Arkansas.
I remember that game.
And Scotty Thurman hit a ridiculous shot from the corner.
Yeah, it almost hit the ceiling.
And Duke did everything right on that defensive possession. They forced a terrible shot and it went in. But after the game, or maybe it was in the final, before the Final Four, in one of the press conferences, he was like, basketball's a game of runs. You have to get on your run and get going and try to go on a 10-0, 12-2, something like this to like get the game in under your control, and you also have to be able to withstand the other team's run, and they will go on one. Like they will go on one. If you're the Milwaukee Bucks yesterday and you're up by 10, 12, whatever points they were up by in the third quarter, you have to know in the back of your mind, or the coaching staff has to know, the Raptors will go on a run, especially with the Raptors at home, right? Mm-hmm. Because all it takes is one dunk, and we saw what dunk it was. Mm-hmm. It was Kyle Lowry just basically stopping on a drive and underhanding the ball to Leonard, who dunks over Giannis, and then literally like the whole country went wild, and Drake was like leading the cheer, so that added to it. I don't know how much you want to talk about Drake, but
Drake annoys me. You know what? He's from here, he's Canadian and all that, and he's very famous worldwide, but he annoys me. And like, I get it, there are fans that sit courtside at every NBA game.
Yeah.
But that doesn't give you the privilege or the right to be a distraction.
Yeah.
The fans that sit there, if you notice, the regular fans that sit there, they sit there. They don't stand up. Yeah. They don't walk around.
They stand up and cheer, but they don't get as involved as he does.
I was watching a game, I think it was game 3 of the series with my buddy. And this was before all the hubbub about Drake came out and how Milwaukee was pissed off at him. I said to my friend as we were watching the game, I'm like, how does the NBA allow that to happen? How does he not get reprimanded? You shouldn't be allowed to do what he's doing. And
there's a couple of schools of thought that are like that in the off season. There could be some rules because of Drake's antics.
Why are they waiting till the off season?
There could be some rule change. Well, that's the way they operate. But look, I don't think there's anything terribly wrong with what he's doing. I like it. I find it amusing. It's fun. It's like what we always say. Sometimes the stuff that's going on off the court is better than what's going on the court.
For sure.
It's fun to watch, and it's fun to see him involved. But there's just a little bit too much of like, I'd like to see Drake sitting courtside with a Raptors jersey on, because he's always wearing his own merchandise, right?
Usually,
so
yes.
That rubs me in a way that's saying he's self-promoting this whole time. But I don't want to get down on Drake. I don't want to be one of these, like, The Simpsons, that Simpsons episode. You're not a big Simpsons guy, but
I've never watched a Simpsons episode, so no, I don't know it.
Old man screams at cloud, basically. Like, that's the headline in the newspaper. It's like me and you here being the two old guys that are just like not feeling the pulse of what's going on, and we're just down on everything. But that's not the case at all. I like Drake. I just the self-promotion of aspect of it rubs me a little bit the wrong way. But he was hyped yesterday. It was something to see. And do you think Drake turned the series? Because Budenholzer, the coach of the Bucks, after they lost, I don't know if it was lost game 3 or game 4 at home.
After game 4.
Yeah, he was like, he didn't focus on like what happened in the game. He was focused on like how Drake was like on the court, and he was like giving Nick Nurse a back rub and like.
Yeah, Budenholzer shouldn't have even mentioned that.
No, I think that turned a lot because he all of a sudden he was like, that's when you start blaming things. You have to look at when things aren't going your way. You need to look within at your team. What are we doing wrong, and what can we do better? Right? Clearly, what they were doing wrong is. Giannis was forcing shots, and the Raptors had a wall around the basket, and he couldn't go anywhere, right?
Well, because one thing, Giannis is really, really good. He's like, he could be the MVP, but he doesn't have the best outside shot. In fact,
no, he doesn't have any.
Right. So you know what he's going to do.
But it's not just the outside shot. It's any other kind of shot other than a layup or a dunk, because he's a low post player without any low post moves, right? His low post move is, I'm going to drive as hard as I can to the basket, and I'm faster, stronger, taller, and I have a bigger reach than anybody else, and I'll either get fouled or I'll dunk it, right? That's his go-to move. And once you can defend that, which you can pretty easily by just stacking 2 guys in front of the basket and making him run into you, you need to find something else. So like back what I was saying, like the Bucks didn't look within to try to figure out how to improve their game. They started blaming other factors. And once the blame game starts, that tells you a little bit about the psyche of the team, They're like, we're not doing anything wrong. It's all Drake's fault, Yeah.
Well, that's a little silly, because I don't, while I don't agree with Drake's antics, his antics had nothing to do with the outcome of the game.
Well, get ready for some more antics against the Warriors.
Of course.
What are the odds of Drake and Draymond Green actually getting into an argument on the court?
I think very high.
Very high, right?
Yes.
Am I the only one that's already thinking about this?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it, but you're burying the lead. You've mentioned Drake. You've mentioned Draymond Green. You're talking about the Golden State Warriors already. You're talking about Giannis. You haven't even talked about Kawhi Leonard. Like, I don't care that the Raptors made a coaching change. I don't care. Nick Nurse could be the nicest guy or the best coach. I don't know if he is or not. But the biggest difference that the Raptors between this year and last year is Kawhi Leonard. And don't tell 100%. Me that it's anything else, because it's 1,000% Kawhi Leonard. This guy has proven right. that he is one of, if not the top player in the league. Because for a player to come to this team that has never had any success and to be able to take them to the NBA Finals, he must be unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, like just to put an asterisk against what you next to what you said. So the team has had success, regular season success.
Yeah, but they've done nothing in the playoffs.
They've never done anything in the playoffs, and they've always run up against LeBron James, which has been like their Achilles heel, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But like what Kawhi Leonard's doing it's funny because what Kawhi Leonard's doing in the playoffs, like, okay, he's the best player in the NBA right now. For sure. But go back a month ago, before the playoffs started. And what's the conversation? Who's the MVP? James Harden or Giannis? No one's talking about Kawhi Leonard.
Because Kawhi missed a bunch of games because of health reasons. So he didn't have he didn't rack up as many points or as many numbers as James Harden or Giannis Antetokounmpo because, well, he didn't play 82 games.
And he also doesn't have to, because the Raptors spread the ball more. He's, as much as Kawhi's the focal point here in the playoffs, in the regular season they do share the ball a lot, and the scoring gets to be like a little bit more even, so.
But the other thing you don't see on the stat sheet is Kawhi's defense.
His defense. But it's not just him. The Raptors are a tremendous defensive team.
Okay, but Kawhi's a huge part of that.
Oh, of course, 100%.
Like you were saying, how it's easy to defend Giannis. It's easy to defend Giannis when you have Kawhi Leonard on your team. You take him off your team, it's not so easy to defend him.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like Gasol did. I on the last episode, I called out Gasol to step up. And he still didn't really, because he's a non-factor offensively. He hit a big 3 last night in the last couple of minutes, which was huge. But he's really not contributing offensively. He stands at the 3-point line. The other team dares him to shoot, whatever. But the job that he's doing, that he did defensively on Giannis was unbelievable. He's a rock under there, Gasol, and he understands how to play defense. His positioning, the shot blocking, just the way he's able to defend without drawing fouls. And I really like how the refs in all the games, they let them play because it was very physical, right? It was extremely physical. And Giannis thinks he's fouled on every play, right? Mm-hmm. But if they're letting it go, they're letting it go.
Well, so I'll tell you, I didn't watch any NBA games all regular season.
Right.
And in the playoffs, I've watched, I think, 3 games, all from this past round.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So in the 3 games, I've learned a few things.
Okay, let's hear it. What Josh learned.
So one thing I've learned is that your buddy Fred VanVleet,
he's great.
Well, hold on. He's great ever since he had his kid on Monday.
Yes, that's true.
Prior to that, all these shots that he's been hitting, he was missing every single shot.
But I started to like VanVleet last year because I recognized he's a really good offensive player.
But he wasn't good last year either. If you recall in the playoffs when they got eliminated, he's putting up these terrible threes and he wasn't hitting any of them. And even this year, he was putting up threes, he wasn't hitting any of them. All of a sudden, he has a kid, and now the guy can't miss.
Yeah, he can't miss, right? The stress is off.
This is only the last 3 games he's been like this.
Yeah. But I mean, if he's hitting threes, it's huge, right?
Oh, if he's hitting threes, that's unbelievable. Because that's offense you weren't expecting to get. Now, on the flip side, I think the Raptors had the second best 3-point shooter in the entire league during the regular season, Danny Green. And this guy's been invisible.
He can't hit anything.
I don't understand.
At one point I looked at the stats last night, and I'm going to check them right now. I think he had no points.
I don't even know if he took off his tracksuit yesterday, meaning that he didn't come into the game.
Danny Green had no points yesterday, only played 14 minutes, was 0 for 4 from the field because Nurse recognized that VanVleet played 34 minutes yesterday because he's, if VanVleet is hitting his shots.
You go with the hot hand, obviously.
You have to.
But Danny Green has, what's his name? Jack White syndrome.
Oh, can't hit a thing. He can't hit anything. But I mean, 3-point shooting is like very contagious, in that, and it's a lot of confidence. So all it takes is for him to hit one shot and he could hit 10 in a row, because Danny Green is a lethal 3-point shooter, so
he was during the regular season.
And they're going to need him against the Warriors because he's a taller guard, and they're going to need, like, the Warriors, why they're so good is because everybody, well, other than Curry, who's kind of little, but they're all the same size, So it's they pose the defensive matchups, like you need to have a guy who can guard Klay Thompson, who's like, Van Vliet can't guard Klay Thompson,
Yeah, I don't. I foresee a short series.
No, I don't.
You don't? I do.
No,
I think the Warriors.
I think the Raptors are being totally disrespected by the Vegas odds, by all the American media. Mm-hmm. No one and there's a reason by it, because there's a bias, like and you can't help it. It's in the back of everybody's mind. The Raptors, this team from Canada, they've never been there before. Mm-hmm. The Warriors are so great. Yeah, but like, come on, the Raptors are good. You don't think they could win a couple home games?
Did you not see what the Warriors did to the Portland Trailblazers and what they did to the Houston Rockets?
Yeah, I know.
And those two teams, Portland and Houston, are not exactly pushovers.
No, they're not. But what's interesting is, first of all, the Raptors have home court advantage.
Yes, I'm aware.
Okay, which I didn't realize till like midnight last night when I went to look and see when is the first game, and then I was like, wait a minute. The Raptors are at home for game 1?
I told you a month ago that when I was talking about the expectations for the Raptors, how they had the second best record in the NBA, and you brushed it off.
I know. But look, no, because that conversation was about the Sixers. And I was saying the Sixers think they could beat the Raptors, and it's not out of the realm of possibility. And it was true. It went to game 7 with a crazy buzzer beater. Okay. Like, come on.
Okay.
Sixers have a good team. Like they thought that they could have made it also. Although I don't think the Bucks would have steamrolled them, I think.
I think so.
Because the Sixers don't play the same defense as the Raptors. The Raptors are a tremendous, tenacious defensive team. Gasol,
yes, but
Kawhi, Lowry, these guys all play defense.
But they now have to defend this 3-point shooting team, which they haven't had to play a team like this yet in the playoffs.
No, this is true. Although the Bucks shoot a tremendous amount of threes, but they're cold. They were cold.
Right. Normally the Bucks do have good 3-point shooting. Other than Giannis.
Yeah. No, that's what they do. They Giannis dunks and everyone stands around shooting threes.
Right. It's a good recipe, actually.
Yeah.
Well, they did have the most wins in the league, so.
Not only that, when like all the advanced analytics, which I don't really follow, but apparently when you look at like I don't even know the names of the stats in the NBA, like the offensive efficiency and stats like this, the Bucks were like historically great. They were number 1 in like every kind of stat, and also wins, which is the most important stat.
Did you, by the way, notice the other thing I love about the NBA?
Yeah.
That I can't take my eyes off the fans in the front row.
Oh, well, yeah, they're paying $10,000 a seat.
And a lot of them are very attractive.
So who are I guess Drake's going to be there front and center for game 1. I know a lot of the Leafs players have been coming to the games in Toronto,
and Jay's players as well.
Yeah. I wonder who's going to come at Golden State. There's always people in San Francisco. They always attract some celebrities.
For sure.
Yeah.
You saw at the not yesterday, but the previous game 5.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers was there
with the owner's daughter.
Yeah, and you saw she was wearing a T-shirt with a rapper that Drake's in a feud with.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I heard about him on a different podcast.
But Drake took it in stride because he tweeted to her.
Well, he changed his avatar to her.
Yeah, and he was like, "All's fair, no problem. I'll hook you up for tickets for my show or whatever, anytime you want or something." Like she needs a hookup for tickets, or the father's a bajillionaire. So the one thing I'm actually really looking forward to is not having to watch the games on the Canadian networks. Finally, we'll be able to see the American feed because we'll have it on ABC probably.
Correct. Although of the two Canadian networks, Sportsnet does a better job at basketball than TSN.
Yeah, well, they have the better guys, right?
Yeah, slightly better.
Yeah, the better announcers, slightly better. Anyway, so I look forward to seeing Barkley and Shaq. They're all going to be in Toronto.
I wonder, by the way, well, Wilbon was in Toronto, a few days ago.
Of course. Yeah, well, the Midwest. It's a short flight for him.
Exactly. Well, it's a drive. But I'm not sure, actually. I don't know the answer to this question. I wonder if the Canadian networks are going to have their own broadcast with their own announcers.
They have to. They're the national broadcast holders, no?
Well, in the World Series...
Yeah, in the World
There's
Series.
Sorry, there are two broadcasts. There's the Fox one, and then there's the international one. But I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm curious to find out what happens because there hasn't been a Canadian team in the NBA Finals ever. So I don't know what the rules are.
We're going to get our crack staff, and we're going to look this up.
Or we might only find out when it tips off game one.
Maybe. Maybe. This is true. All right, so the Raptors are in the NBA Finals. Good times.
Yeah.
Right? No, good times. Like, for our podcast, it's great times because, we're
we banned NBA from this podcast.
We did, but, we're a podcast that talks about, like, the big stories in the world of sports, and we look at it from a Canadian perspective, and now we have a Canadian team in the finals.
That's right.
The National Hockey League.
All right, so you want to talk about the other championship that's going to be decided in the next couple of weeks, which is the Stanley Cup Finals?
Are they still playing hockey? Is that still going on?
Believe it or not, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not happy that we've had to wait, it seems like a month for the finals to start.
Do you think the ratings are down for the NHL playoffs on the Canadian networks because the Raptors are taking the spotlight?
I don't. If they are down, I don't think it has anything to do with the Raptors because usually the games are on different nights.
Right, okay.
If they're down, it's because there's no Canadian teams in the NHL playoffs.
That there hasn't been a Canadian team alive for a little while anyways.
Right. So listen, I'm excited for the St. Louis Blues. Obviously everyone knows they were in last place in the entire NHL on January 2nd, and they called up this goalie and they changed their coach, and now they're in the Stanley Cup Finals. So I cannot stand the Boston Bruins, as you know.
Well, we're Montrealers. You live in Toronto now, but like I was explaining to what an American colleague asked me, she's like, "Who are you rooting for in the Stanley Cup Finals?" I'm like, "I'm from Montreal. It's in my DNA to root against Boston. Yeah. It's like I just can't, And then add the Marchand factor, and there you go.
So, but I'm worried.
Yeah,
I think I would have been less worried if the Sharks were in it because the Sharks had like this horseshoe up there, all playoffs.
Yeah, but it ran out.
No, I know, but if it had not ran out, then I would have said, "Oh, the Sharks are going to pull some rabbit out of a hat in the finals, and somehow they're going to win." I don't know if the Blues have that in them. The Bruins are definitely the better team, in my opinion.
I'm not 100% sure of that either.
I think the Bruins are the better team. Like on paper, the Bruins are the better team.
I think the Blues are so much more physical. They may just grind down the Bruins.
The Bruins are also physical. The Bruins have Zdeno Chara. The Bruins have all these guys. Like whatever type of game the Blues want to play, the Bruins can play with them.
That's true.
The only like I won't say edge, because that's not even the right word, but the only edge the Blues may have is that their goaltender Jordan Binnington is still relatively unknown. Yes, he's been the goaltender for the last whatever months. Yeah. But when these rookies come up and they get into the zone, like Steve Penny, like Ken Dryden,
Patrick
Waugh, like sometimes it's the goalie just decides, like, I'm not losing and we're winning and that's it.
Yeah.
So that's
really
the
Ward,
only.
Remember Cam Ward with the Hurricanes the year they won the cup? He was unstoppable.
So that's, I think, the only edge the Blues may have.
But the Bruins really have no slouch in nets too.
I know.
Right?
Tuukka Rask has been amazing.
Yeah. So just going back to what you were saying about the Sharks, like there's a lot of people saying, and I've heard it and I've read it, that hand pass is what propelled the Blues to like they were so mad about it that they were like, no, we're not losing this series because of that stupidity, right? And they took it like personally and they just killed them after that. Which may be true.
That and all the injuries the Sharks had.
The Sharks were so injured. Pavelski, whether he was playing or not, he wasn't healthy. Erik Karlsson's clearly not healthy. Joe Thornton is 100 years old, so who knows?
And Thomas Hertl.
Right? Hertl. Like you can go on and on. Who knows? I don't even think Martin Jones was healthy, to be honest. So like they were really like just not able to compete, But the series is interesting. We mentioned the goaltending battle, Rask versus Binnington. And you also have the matchup of probably the two best two-way forwards in the league, which is Bergeron, and on the Blues, Ryan O'Reilly.
Okay. I've never heard him mentioned in that, same sentence, but...
Well, they're both great face-off men. They're both two-way players. I think it could be interesting. Like, are the coaches going to... Whoever has the home team and has the last change, is that coach going to, like, match up O'Reilly against Bergeron? Or, like, I don't know. I think it should be interesting. Although I think the matchup sometimes is overrated, but I don't know. It should be interesting to see how they'll get deployed,
Well, I'm heavily rooting for St. Louis.
No, me too.
First of all, they've never won the Cup, so I'd like to see him win it.
Yeah.
Plus, Rick Walmsley used to play on that team, so that's another reason.
I mean, think of all the great... I was thinking about it because we like to do this, and we've done this sometime. We did this, I think, when the Astros were in the World Series, and we were talking about, like, who were some of the great Houston Astros of our childhood, and we talked about, like, Jose Cruz and Cesar Cedeno and these guys. So, like, can you, like, think of, like, some great St. Louis Blues from your childhood? I mean, obviously, Bernie Federko is right there, right?
Oh, yeah, I can name you the entire St. Louis Blues roster from 1986, which was the year they lost to the Calgary Flames in the semifinals.
Just to let everyone know, Josh's all-time favorite player is Rick Walmsley, so he follows everything about this obscure goalie that most people don't remember.
So Rick Walmsley was on the team, and interestingly enough, he and Greg Millen split the games. Like, they pretty much played almost the same amount of games that year in the playoffs, which, by the way, back then... If you didn't have like a number one goalie that played every single game, you had no chance of winning the Stanley Cup.
Well, it's still the same now.
Well, no, but now, like you saw with the Penguins with Fleury and Murray, they split it and they won the Cup that year.
That's true.
But anyhow, so some of the other players on the Blues that year, wow, some really bad players. I mean, there was obviously Doug Gilmour was on the team, Bernie Federko. I'm sure you'll remember Ron Flockhart and Mark Hunter.
Flocky Hockey.
Yeah. And there was Dave Barr, Eddie Beers, Bruce Bell, Charlie Bourgeois, Kent Carlson, and your buddy who was in a movie, Gino Cavallini. I believe he was in the movie.
Why is he my buddy?
Wasn't he in that movie with Rob Lowe?
Gino Cavallini? Oh. Youngblood.
Yes.
Youngblood just came to me.
Yes, and I think Gino Cavallini was in the movie Youngblood.
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah. That's
anyway,
cool.
There was a bunch of former Montreal Canadiens like Rick Nattrass, and wasn't Greg Pozlowski on the Canadiens at one point?
At one point, the Canadiens and the Blues had like a crazy trading relationship where there was a lot of ex-Canadians on the Blues. Well, you already mentioned Mark Hunter in that.
Right. Brian Sutter was the captain of the team. Doug Wickenheiser was on that team. Rob Ramage was on that team. It's funny, I'm looking at the roster now, and of like the 25 guys on the team, 20 of them were Canadian-born players, which I guess back then wasn't such a big deal because back then almost every player in the league was Canadian.
Well, back then there was almost no Russians in the league.
Right.
And Americans were few and far between, right? So you didn't have the influx of players. You had the odd Swede or Finn, but that's about it. But then what about some of those other great St. Louis Blues? The other teams that I remember are like the Hall and Oates combo. They had some good teams, They've always had a lot of good teams. They had the Chris Pronger era where everyone thought he's going to elevate them. He, was the Norris Trophy winner on the Blues. And they've always had a lot of good teams. They just haven't been able to... Like the Raptors, they just haven't been able to get over the playoff hump,
Well, I mean, listen, it's not easy getting all the way to the finals because you have to beat a lot of good teams. This year was a crazy year. I didn't think the Blues were going to make it to the finals before the playoffs started.
No, I didn't either.
But this I think is going to be different from the NBA finals. I think this will actually go long.
Yeah, I hope the NBA finals goes long. I want to have the drama. I want to see some good games,
Of course you do. Who doesn't?
So is that all you've got for the NBA and the NHL? You have anything else? I literally actually took no notes this week because I figured the show's kind of writing itself, with the two finals starting.
I want to talk a little bit about baseball.
Major League Baseball.
Baseball.
Yes.
Let's do it. What's going on?
No, so there's something. The
Jays are horrible.
The Jays are horrible, but I don't even want to talk about the Jays. I'm very happy that the Washington Nationals continue to lose. This gives me so much pleasure for so many reasons. I've mentioned on this show many times that franchise is cursed and they will never win anything. And they haven't won anything. And even all those really good Washington Nationals teams with Bryce Harper and Steven Strasburg and Max Scherzer, I don't think they've won. They've made the playoffs, but I don't think they've won a playoff series ever.
They have never.
And they will never. And then because I and you listen to a local Washington, D.C. podcast, and we hear Tony and his gang complaining about the Nationals every day, this gives me so much joy and pleasure. You know, for them to sit there and say, it's almost like they don't know anything about baseball because they complain about Brian Dozier. Well, you never should have signed Brian Dozier because he's a terrible player. And then they complained about the manager, Davey Martinez. You know what? You could change the manager. You can fire him and hire somebody new. It's not going to make any difference.
It's not going to make any difference because when Davey Martinez looks out into the bullpen and he's trying to figure out who to bring in to try to close down a game or hold a lead or keep a game close, he's looking at one piece of dreck after another.
Exactly.
So the next manager is still going to be looking at the same garbage in the bullpen. It's a black hole, that bullpen.
So firing the manager isn't going to solve anything. And then for Tony to say, you know, I think we miss Bryce Harper.
No kidding.
You think? Like the best player on your team is gone? You think you miss him?
I mean,
of course you do.
He's not even doing that great, Bryce Harper, to be honest.
No, he's not. Okay. He's not. But if you had the Bryce Harper of last season, that Bryce Harper on this Nationals team, they would be much better.
They would be better, but they still have no bullpen. They have not had a bullpen. The weakness of that franchise, when the teams were good and they were winning the division and in the playoffs, they had no bullpen, and the bullpen let them down. Mm-hmm. And they never learned their lesson, and they never improved it. They thought they were improving it. They saved all this money by not signing Bryce Harper. And then what do they do to address their bullpen? They go out and sign Trevor Rosenthal, like a bargain basement solution. A guy who's like his arm is hanging on by a piece of scotch tape, right? Like you don't know if he's good or no good. It's like rolling the dice. And then a guy like Craig Kimbrell is still unsigned, and then you wonder why your bullpen sucks.
Well, Craig Kimbrell is asking for way too much money. I would not pay him that kind of money.
Of course he is.
Plus,
but there are other options.
That last year in the playoffs, Craig Kimbrell, the Red Sox won despite Craig Kimbrell.
He did. They did.
So
he was shaky. Shaky would be putting it kindly.
Right. So I wouldn't advise signing that guy. The only break I'll give the Nationals, if you want to call it that, is that there really wasn't anyone out there available to go and sign.
Yeah.
Like there of the 30 teams in baseball, I think 25 of them have a terrible bullpen.
That's so true.
So I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah, it's so true. Well, you got to try to promote the guys you have and develop the players in your system. It's not always about signing free agents, especially when it comes to closers. Closers could be had. Closers could be created.
Right. You take a pitcher that's a good pitcher. He might be a starting pitcher, and you convert him into a reliever.
Yeah. I don't know. The Nationals are going nowhere. Baseball, I'm not really going to pay attention to it until the next 10 days are over, till the two finals of the other sports are finished.
It's going to be more than 10 days, I think.
Ish. Well, yeah, it's going to be more than 10 days for sure for the NBA, because the NBA is only starting on Thursday.
Right.
But so I wanted to try to pay attention to the Jays this year because they have a lot of exciting young players, but their team sucks. So I don't know.
They called up Craig Biggio's kid.
Yeah, they called up Biggio.
And they also have Dante Bichette's kid in the minors.
Yeah.
They're full of all these kids.
But Bichette they haven't called up yet, right?
No, because he's injured, I think.
Yeah. He's also not as clear cut as of a major league hitter as the other two. Bichette supposedly is a tremendous defensive player, but his hitting is they're a little bit unsure if he's ready for the majors yet.
Well, we'll see. I mean, it's funny because the Jays are playing the Padres this weekend, and the Padres also called up a couple of young guys. They called up this Canadian kid, Josh Naylor.
Yeah.
And then not this weekend, but recently the Padres called up Paul Quantrill's kid, Cal.
He pitched yesterday or the day before.
He pitched yesterday, yeah. So in this series, there's a lot of young kids on both sides of the field.
That's cool.
But you saw the score yesterday. I think was it 19-4 or something?
Yeah.
Final score.
Ugly. It was ugly.
Yeah. I was actually I was at the game on Thursday. There was a day game. The Jays played the Red Sox.
How was that?
And I went, and whatever. It was fun to go. The roof, they still haven't opened the roof in Toronto, which is quite annoying. I think they're working on it. Who knows what? Seems like it's having the same kind of problems that the roof in Montreal used to have.
Ugh, I hope not.
Well,
because they look forward to opening the roof in Toronto once the weather gets nice.
When that stadium, with the roof closed, that stadium is an awful place to be.
Yeah. So, I know. I remember when the first time I went to a game there, I was like, this is it? This is the Rogers Center? This is the Sky Dome? It's like...
With the roof
it's just
open,
another
it's
big
cool.
bowl, it's just another big bowl.
Yeah.
Like you feel,
With the roof open,
when
nice.
it's open, when it's open, it's better.
That's all I got.
Before we sign off, remember you can listen and subscribe to new and archived episodes of the Skip and Josh podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and of course Spotify. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. We would love to hear from you via email, skipandjoshshow@gmail.com, via Twitter @skipandjosh, or by liking and following our Facebook page. As always, you can get all the links to everything I just talked about on our website, skipandjosh.com.
We leave you with this.
So, Josh, what have you got for the listeners to close the show?
Well, I don't know if this is true, but you've heard of a club sandwich many times.
Oh, Lord, don't get me started on this.
Do you know? I never knew what the letters club.
It's not true.
It's not true?
You're falling for like an internet thing.
Okay. So what does club stand for then?
Well, it's funny because I was involved in a Facebook conversation about this. So there's something that came out that said, I never knew that club sandwich stood for chicken and lettuce under bacon or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's just something that someone made up.
Okay.
You can actually look up the origin of the club sandwich and you can see it was sometime in like 1890 or 1900 where like they made it at like a men's club and they made this sandwich, and like, you can trace the origin of it. Someone just made that up. There's actually some kind of phenomenon that's called like reverse acronyms, where people are creating these acronyms in retrospect and making them sound like they're real. But fun fact about that, and I could tell you about the conversation I had on Facebook about this. So my whole entire life, my dad claimed, and he was 100% convinced that this was his truth. And I believed it as a kid, but obviously not now. But he claimed and would swear back and forth that he invented the triple-decker sandwich. That he used to go, so my dad, it was probably like in around 1940 or maybe the late 1930s. He would go into the original Walensky's in Montreal and ask Mo Walensky himself to make him a sandwich using 3 pieces of bread. My dad swore that he was the first person, at least in Montreal, that ever thought of that, which is obviously fiction.
No, hold on. You can't prove that he's wrong. You can't.
I can't.
So how do you know it's obviously fiction?
I don't know. It seems a little bit too fantastic.
I'm gonna roll with your dad.
Okay, good. So I know you always ask me around this time about the song of the summer.
Oh, is it that time of year?
Well, we're already on May 26th.
But the weather has been sucky.
Yeah. And there's a clear favorite for the song of the summer, and probably the song that's going to be the song of the summer once we get even for the next 2 months.
I bet you have never heard of this song.
Well, you've heard of the band, even if you have never heard of any of their songs.
Okay.
It's the Jonas Brothers.
Oy vey.
Yeah, and they have a song called Sucker. And it's definitely the song of the summer. If you ask me right now, we've already crowned it.
Okay. Well, it's a little early to be
when
making that.
When I say we, it's like me and my family, and we all kind of agree that's the song of the summer. So we'll see how that goes.
All right. Well, good for you. You'll let me know at the end of the summer what the actual results were.
I will.
I've never heard that song. By the way, speaking of music, I can't even name you one song by Drake.
Come on.
I can't. I can't give you the title of a Drake song.
Well, I mean, you don't know, like, started from the bottom, now we're here.
Oh, that's a Drake song?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
That's, like, pretty famous, you know?
Okay.
There's, you must have heard of Hotline Bling, you know, I used to call you on my cell phone. You know
that's song? Okay, I didn't know that was him. But, I mean, I don't know what the names of these songs.
Well, I'm not sure I know the names either, but I know the songs, yeah.
That second one is a terrible song, by the way.
We'll leave the listeners with Drake. I'm sure he'll be present during the whole NBA Finals, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he'll be there.
All right. I'll talk to you next time.
All right, have a good week.